Star blessings, beloveds. Let's talk about the upcoming new moon in Aries. There's actually going to be two Aries new moons, which is pretty extraordinary and very, very powerful indeed. So the first one occurs literally just around the equinox time. So a new moon in Aries. This new moon is the truest new moon that you could ever possibly have. The truest. There is no truer new moon than this because it's in Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac. It's at 0 degrees, which is the beginning of the zodiac. It's in Aries. Did I say that already? Which is the first sign of the zodiac. It's at the equinox, which is 0 degrees Aries, the beginning of the true astrological new year. It's a new moon. A new moon is represented again by the archetype of Aries. So you can see from those different layers, you cannot get a more powerful, true new moon than this one. So for that reason, it's incredibly powerful, to say the least. Further to that, the thing to also understand is that there are critical degrees in the zodiac, in the different signs. There are different critical degrees. Now, when it comes to cardinal signs, Aries is a cardinal sign. Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, they are the 4 cardinal signs. And so when you have 0 degrees at any of those signs, that's considered to be a critical degree. So from a collective perspective, which I generally don't focus too much on, because I find that whilst that is interesting and as an overview to maybe explore a couple of themes, it's interesting. But I think when it comes to working with astrology from our own personal evolutionary perspective, what we are always looking for is to better understand ourselves and how we can personally integrate with the different energies, the new transitions, the new ingresses, the new moons, and so on and so forth. But I do have to say, though, that this new moon in Aries, there are some concerns around it for sure, because it's 0 degrees, as I said, which is a critical degree. And further to that, when you have something activated through the stars, through the cosmos, at the 0 degree cardinal point, typically what follows is often a crisis or a very big shift or transition or change, collectively speaking. And usually crises do bring about certain changes that need to happen. And if it wasn't for the crisis, that change would have never have taken place. Right. So that's why crises in the Chinese language, as far as I understand, literally means opportunity. Right. But unfortunately, when there's a crisis and something critical erupts, you know, there are consequences, and there are certain communities or individuals that might get the the bad end of the spectrum, as it were, just to use simple language. So, you know, something big is going to happen, okay, collectively. And a lot of the reason for that as well is, first of all, as I said, it's a 0 degrees critical degree Aries. Aries is ruled by what? By Mars. Mars is the lower octave to Pluto. The will and the force of Mars in the hands of somebody who's very powerful and very unconscious is the most dangerous recipe. That's just a fact. So I just hope that, you know, it doesn't play out in a disastrous way, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if it did. And the reason for that as well, of course, is because the ruler, which is Mars, the new moon it is actually squaring Mars out of sign, but as the sun continues to progress through Aries, that square is within this cycle, right? This lunation cycle, let's just put it that way. in 2 weeks' time, when we have the full moon in Libra, Mars is going to be in Cancer by that time, and therefore it will be squaring the full moon. So it is very interesting in that this lunation cycle, both Mars and Pluto have an aspect to this lunation cycle. Mars, Pluto, two very, very powerful forces, which can be very difficult energies in the wrong hands. They can create a lot of conflict, tension, things like that. I'm thinking about persons, perhaps in the political arena, certain countries, there's, when you're talking about, in my opinion, on a general sort of level, when we're dealing with the political arena, unfortunately, there is so much within that stream that speaks to dishonesty, selfishness, completely unconscious, completely driven for their own sort of greed and power, and corporate climbing, being in rulership, and so on and so forth. It's very rarely that we see a human being at that caliber, at that level of authority, who deeply, genuinely cares about the human family, deeply, authentically cares. We've had persons like that in our history. Martin Luther King comes to mind like that. But let's just say at the present moment, and I mean universally political, though I don't know every single politician for every country, so perhaps I shouldn't make that claim. But as far as I know, with most countries, let's say, there's no one that I have seen that appears to be of the caliber of Martin Luther King. I think that's a pretty fair assumption. So when you think about these energies and that level of life, the Saturn world of life, Saturn has been stifling, as it were, the collective human family for more than a couple of thousand years now, which is why we see this constant conflict and power struggle with countries and land and power and greed, and this is mine and that's our land and that doesn't belong to you, etc., etc. It is cycles like this that activate certain things that go on that could be very problematic, especially when you're talking about Aries, Mars, Pluto, new moon, 0 degrees, Aries, critical degree. Further to that, this is the time, it's the equinox as well. So spiritually, the equinox portal opens up for us in a way to embrace the seasonal changes to begin with, because the equinox is based on the seasonal changes, right? And that's what informs our tropical zodiac as Western astrologers. But spiritually, there are higher implications to that as well. Maybe I'll come back and talk about that separately. But this is in the mix as well, that even just the Earth herself, there's a shift occurring like seasonally. So there's big, implications of changes going on. Pluto ingresses into Aquarius, which I'm going to probably talk about. I would say I'm probably going to do a few videos on that, because there's so much to say. It's impossible to attempt to cover in one video, number one. And number two, I think as time goes on, as we assimilate that transition of Pluto into Aquarius, our soul opens up to the potential of that portal and what it speaks to for us individually and collectively as well. So as a result, each day that goes by, and the more time I, sit with that energy, reflect and have my own sort of insights or reflections come through in a way where I can articulate it and speak about it, that's a process within itself. So I could very easily do a video right now, tomorrow, on Pluto and Aquarius, and just, rattle off some strong points, but sort of generic or general kind of statements, because I understand what Pluto means and I understand the archetype Aquarius. And a lot of people are doing that. And that's great, because for people who don't know about what Pluto signifies or what Aquarius signifies, it's quite educational, right? And it's insightful. But I want to try and get into it from a much deeper space with what transpires inside me. Now, this is important because this lunation cycle occurs when Pluto ingresses into Aquarius for the first time at 0 degrees Aquarius. Now, that 0 degrees Aquarius is where the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction occurred in 2020 at 0 Aquarius. So that conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn, which occurred at 0 Aquarius, is a cycle that speaks of the next 200 years of Jupiter and Saturn forming these conjunctions in the trinity of air. So that's important unto itself. And so Pluto ingressing into Aquarius at this time, at 0 Aquarius, it activates more of what the potential of that conjunction actually means for the entire human family. So there's that in the mix as well, in terms of this lunation cycle, right? Let me just actually bring up a chart so that we can grab some visuals and start looking at things together. So here is the chart for the new moon. Aries, 0 degrees Aries. This is based for Melbourne, Australia. And so, of course, wherever you are, you would adjust it to your location. But as I always say, to personalize any planet ingressing, moving into a new sign, ingress is just a technical term, you could say, for a planet moving into a new sign. Or when you're looking at a new lunation cycle or whatever it is, you always want to look at it in reference to your own birth chart. So in this case, we're looking at where is 0 degrees Aries in my birth chart. This is where this lunation cycle is born. Now, born, birth, beginnings, urgency, they're all really great words for Aries. Aries is the emergence and spark of life, the birth of all things. When you are born, that is an Aries experience. And the reason it can be a dangerous thing sometimes, which is why sometimes things go wrong when mothers give birth to children, it's a dangerous experience because it's an Aries experience. It's completely full of so much potential. It's bursting with this undeniable life force source, Aries, emergence coming through. But the danger is imminent as well because it's ruled by Mars, and Mars rules danger. So with new beginnings and Aries and new moon in Aries, there can be a sense of danger, if you like, but there's also the level of needing to have to take risks sometimes, and risks sometimes imply it's dangerous. You know, I'm not talking about something that's acting upon something that's irrational, unhinged, psychotic, whatever you want to call it. I'm talking about simply taking an action in your life at this point in time where you normally wouldn't take that course of action, or you normally wouldn't take that kind of risk because you're too conservative, because you don't have strong Aries in your chart, because you're not that kind of person, because you normally are very reserved and cautious and so on and so forth. Well, this energy is there to inspire that level of courage and risks to plunge into, you know, a new journey. It's a new moon in Aries, new journey, new beginnings, courage. Let's talk about some of the aspects again. I said that Mars is squaring this new moon because it is. It's an out of sign square, but it's still a square and it's very close. So therefore, it holds a lot of influence over this new moon. And as I said, further to that, shortly after this Mars ingresses into Cancer, So it's squaring this lunation cycle. Literally, the whole cycle is marked by Pluto and Mars very strongly. When Mars is at around about the middle of Libra, about 15 Libra, it's going to be squaring the full moon. When Mars is in Cancer at about 15 degrees of Cancer, I meant to say, it will be squaring the full moon in Libra. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to have a full moon in Libra, right? We have a new moon 2 weeks later. The moon moves around the zodiac, comes right around. The sun would have moved ahead as well. And they end up in Libra Aries. So Libra Aries is emphasized again in this cycle. And then come April, 20th of April, we have another new moon, which is a solar eclipse at the 29th degree of Aries. And that too is impacted by Pluto. But I'll talk about that later, okay? I just want to kind of focus on this new moon. So there's a sextile from Pluto here. Now, the sextile is encouraging. If it was a square, I'd be a little bit concerned, kind of, to say the least. But this is a sextile, so that's promising, okay? There is a square from Mars. There is a conjunction from Neptune, and there is a conjunction to Mercury. So a few different aspects. Now, the Neptune, it's an interesting one. Today, actually, the Sun and Neptune are conjunct as I speak, as I sit here and do this recording, which is the 16th of, March, and it will be the 15th for many of you in the Northern Hemisphere. So the Sun and Neptune have had this, or are having this experience together, an embodiment of those two energies in Pisces. And then, the Sun moves away, gets to the equinox point, which is 21st of March. Because if we just go a few hours before this time here that you see on the 22nd of March, the Sun's at 0000, right? But in terms of the new moon, the Sun-Moon conjunction, to align them to an exactness, which is what a new moon is, they have to be on the same degree, the same minute and the same second, actually, technically speaking. It takes it to 0 degrees and 49 minutes. So it's just past the equinox date, right? But it's all there in the same pool, in the same portal. The energy is all flowing and birthing virtually at the same time. The conjunction from Neptune is kind of like a little bit of a trail of what's left behind between the Sun in Pisces being conjunct Neptune in Pisces as we speak at the moment, 16th, 15th of March, 17th March, those days, the Sun and Neptune are conjunct in Pisces. And so, again, the Sun's moved on, etc. But the point is that Neptune is actually conjunct this new moon. It's an out-of-sign conjunction, but it's only about 5 degrees, not even less than 5 degrees. So it's there as an active portal as well. I'm hoping that will soften some of the intensity that this new moon in Aries squaring Mars could potentially bring, at least on that external personality, unconscious level, in the hands of people who have tremendous power, that make decisions and take action in things that are not beneficial for the human family tribe, but is primarily based on wanting to beat somebody, overpower somebody, a nation, a country, an individual, whatever it is, all in the name of I'm more powerful than you. That's where these energies can be alarming. But when we bring it back to our own personal focus, then the energy speaks to us individually in a different way, because we need to look at, well, who am I at this point in my life? Where is Aries in my birth chart? What house does this new moon fall into? The square from Mars you know, it's a dynamic, tension-provoking energy. And so that can have two sides to the coin, right? On the one hand, it can be conflict that might transpire in a, let me just use a hypothetical example. So you're in the new moon in Aries zone, and off you go into this course of action that you want to take, right, relative to a particular situation in your life. The Mars squaring it, Mars is conflicting with the new moon because it's squaring the new moon. It's like two energies are trying to occupy the same space and they can't. So someone has to kind of give in, as it were. So that translates in our own personal life in a way of, going back to the example I was using, I'm wanting to initiate, thank you, is a great word for Aries and cardinal signs, period, initiation. So here we are trying to initiate the truest, newest beginning in our life, right? In some kind of way, in some context, in some aspect of our life. But the Mars is hindering that course of action in some kind of way. So I think the key around that would be to recognize what might need to be toned down a little bit, what might need to be worked in a different way, right? Because the alternate to that would be to go against the force that appears to be conflicting with you, as it were. It could be a situation, a person, whatever it is. And so you're pushing, they're pushing, and so someone's got to win, as it were. It's Mars. Mars is about competition. And so is Aries. Mars rules Aries. So there's a combative kind of energy speaking here. And it's really about having enough awareness to recognize, where do I need to kind of draw the line here? Is it worth it for me to keep pushing and pushing and pushing? In some cases, it might be necessary. It might be the very thing you need to get you out of some depressive state, some slumber, some stuck situation that has just kept you limited. You know, it depends on you, right? That's why I'm speaking broadly and generally. But there is a sense of intense, dynamic, conflicting energy that can arise out of this. But ultimately, it is also a new sense of a true new beginning, like a new sense to a new lease in life, as it were. You know, that bursting. You know, because I'm an Aries, right? So I so resonate to this energy in a lot of ways. And when I'm in my complete Aries mode, I'm like a child, literally like a child. I'm in a zone where I'm fearless, free, uninhibited, full of, you know, sort of excitement and enthusiasm and zest for life, you know, just full of passion, right? That's Aries. So when you get a new moon in Aries, all those kind of themes or feelings can rise within you, right? It's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. When you get an archetype operating at its best, right, its best possible qualities, every single sign in the zodiac is magic. Every single sign. No exceptions. When it's operating at its best. So when you can get in touch with that Aries, raw, courageous spirit energy that fuses you with that spark of life and confidence and courage, it's very powerful. It's very, very powerful and very, very inspiring in spirit. Fire signs inspire people. Aries, inspiration in spirit, fire. That's what fire signs do. That's what, if you notice, when you're around fire sign people, any of the fire signs in different ways, but all of the fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, they will inspire you in some kind of way through their vibration, their core energy, because fire inspires, pure and simple. So again, we can think about that level of it relative to where this new moon is in our own birth chart. Where can we feel that sense of that spark of juice and life and inspiration that propels us forward into a totally new journey, right, that we are ready to embark on. But bearing in mind that it is receiving a square from Mars out of sign, but it's still there. And so there might be a hiccup here or there, or a bit of tension. But if you have enough awareness, you can work around it and work with it. You just have to have the awareness. The Neptune there, as I was saying before, you know, I'm hoping brings a bit of a softness to this intense energy, and I think it will in certain ways. And that's probably one of the best influences of this Neptune outside of the spiritual implications, right? Because when Neptune is there with a new moon, or is conjunct the sun or conjunct the moon, there is always potential for depth, integration into your spiritual life, your spiritual practices, your spiritual insights, into feeling closer to the divine source creation, to all things. I mean, the truth is that we are a spark of light born from the divine source creation to all things. That's what we are in truth at the end of the day, pure and simple. But in this human form, we have a personality, we have experiences, we have this sense of separation, we have attachments, we have karma, we have traumas, we have so much going on that we are working our way through, right? So even though we are that divine spark of life, as it were, we have all these matters. Matter is a word that corresponds to this physical dimension. That's why when you look at a birth chart, the cross of matter is defined by the ascendant, descendant, MC, IC. That's called the cross of matter. And if you understand what each house really speaks to, these are the four pinnacle angles. These are the most powerful points in the chart, and they are purely time dependent, accurate time dependent. So these four angles hold literally everything about who we are and our life experiences, right? Now I'm feeling really, really hot. So just hang on a second, guys. Sorry about this. I know some people will say, why don't you edit it? Why didn't you edit that out? Because I don't edit. Sorry. Okay, so let me get back on track now. Sorry, it's just really, really hot here today, and I should have remembered to turn that on. So that's right, Sun Neptune. See, I just did a Sun Neptune thing. I just totally went into the Neptune zone and kind of flew out of my body and lost focus. So I was trying to say that the Sun Neptune can bring in a softer vibration to this new moon, which I think would be very helpful. The flip side to that coin, of course, is always disillusionment, disappointment, deception, victimization. These are all Neptune words, Pisces, Neptune. So, I think on a collective level that there's going to be some explosive matters that take place. And I also feel that because of Neptune there, it's going to be disguised in a particular way, and it will be deceptive to people's eyes. But let's see as this lunation cycle unfolds, because it's going to be massive, especially 0 Aries, and then we get to 29 Aries, and boom, there comes in the first eclipse for 2023 at 29 Aries, another critical degree. an anaretic degree. It's called 29th degree. Something so fated and karmic happens at the 29th degree. So these are big energies unfolding, you know, over the next few weeks. And so keep your eyes peeled, as they say. Mercury conjunction. So Mercury is the esoteric ruler to Aries, by the way. I don't know how many of you are aware of that, but there's another little golden nugget for you. It is a golden nugget because esoteric astrology, it's a totally different platform and a totally different understanding, and working with your chart in that way is very, very different, of course. But just very simply put, Mercury in Aries, being the esoteric ruler of Aries, being conjunct this new moon, there's tremendous potential for consciousness downloads. I mean, Mercury himself, Hermes, he's like a magician himself. Like Mercury is such an amazing planet that he's such a tricky guy. There's so many things that Mercury can do and so many things that he does do. He's so tricky. Remember, he was the one that had access to all realms, earth, underworld, heaven, so to speak, messenger. Is the guy that connects all the dots, brings it all together, makes the connections to things. It's a very important thing to remember about Mercury. And in Aries, because it's the esoteric ruler, there's something, well, esoteric is a similar word to occult. So it sort of describes things that are hidden out of our conscious view and understanding. So in this case, you know, Mercury being conjunct the new moon and being the esoteric ruler of Aries, there's tremendous potential for psychic conscious download, you know, where you can have just, and I'm not talking about having millions of downloads and, you know, 100 different flashes of insights, as it were. It could just be one thing where you just have a powerful, just to use simple language, powerful aha moment. Something just goes bing and it clicks in your mind, in your consciousness, in your spirit. And it makes a difference. When we have an aha moment, as it were, and we can see the astrology that reflects that as well. I don't know about you guys, but when I have that experience, it's like being a kid in a candy store. You know, I'm so excited and so filled with joy and happiness, and it's like a soul moment of, you know, integration in that moment, and it's very uplifting. So I feel Mercury conjunct this new moon has that potential about it as well. It invokes the esoteric level of Aries, which is closer to divine spirit, source creation, to all things. It has that kind of energy about it. Pluto sextiling the new moon, that is good. Pluto is the soul. It is the evolutionary path of the soul, and a sextile aspect typically speaks to opportunities that present themselves to us. And one thing I like to say about sextiles and opportunities in life, it is always really good if you can just be aware, you know. Awareness is powerful, just like knowledge is powerful. When you have awareness, you can you can connect to things and notice things that otherwise might just might slip past you, because you just didn't have that awareness. You didn't have that understanding, or you weren't, you know, observing. You weren't not waiting for it, but having an awareness of something in particular, right? So you're just kind of observing the ebbs and flows, the energies, right? In this case, we're observing Pluto sextiling the new moon. Now, we've got all that difficult stuff with the Mars squaring at the new moon and so forth, sure. But Pluto is sextile. Sextile aspects are very, very powerful. I've seen Pluto well, actually, Pluto sextile. I had Pluto sextile my Venus not so long ago, a couple of years ago, I think it was. My Venus is in Pisces, so Capricorn to Pisces is a sextile aspect. Now, I had amazing experiences with Pluto sextile Venus. I won't go into whatever that was. It doesn't really matter. But let me just say that I noticed that that journey, that aspect was quite powerful. Now, that was there for, I think I had about 5 hits of it, though. So when you have 5 hits from a transit, usually something pretty substantial, manifests through that sextile aspect. In any case, this is a lunation cycle, new moon in Aries, and Pluto sextiling it. So again, it's just showing us that with this integration of we're standing at a new kind of on a new field, if you like. It's equinox. The seasons are shifting. You guys are going to get summer, we're going to get winter, so on and so forth. It's a new cycle, new moon in Aries, etc., etc. So perhaps the new journey that you're wanting to undertake, right? The Pluto assists in some kind of way because it's a sextile aspect. There's an opportunity, literally an opportunity. You just have to have your eyes open to the potential of the opportunity that arises, because the opportunity, let's see, it's out of sign, so we have to look at it a bit differently here. It's earth and fire. So earth can, when opportunities come from the earth triad, they are usually connecting to the material plane, the physicality of life. Earth, that's physicality. So the opportunity might come through some, in the physical, as it were, like through a person that you end up connecting with. Some person presents you with an opportunity to help you in that Aries new moon journey that you're trying to give birth to. But it's going to require you, obviously. This is the case all the time. No one can do anything for us, really. People can support us and help us and encourage us, but it is always up to us to make a decision, right? And take a particular course of action. Otherwise, we're just we're not deciding for our life and for ourselves. So this is a really, really positive, powerful energy to have the courage, the balls, if I can use that language, to step into your own personal, individual power of giving birth to something that's important for you. And Pluto sextiling the new moon supports that in a very powerful way, because Pluto is the most powerful planet. The most powerful planet. And it's a sextile, which is opportunity. It's assisting. Pluto and the new moon here, they're in flow. Even though one might argue, well, Pluto's in Capricorn and the new moon's in Aries, technically that's a square. It's a square by sign. It is. So I guess, if we were to add that to the picture, we might say, well, there's maybe an underlying theme that might bring up some tension, but because of the distance between them, we're able to see that there's a sextile aspect. So it softens the potential challenge of the dynamic square energy between Capricorn and Aries. And I suppose, Capricorn would bring up this is what's been expected of me. And Aries would be saying, but this is how I really feel. This is what I really want to do. This is what makes my soul feel excited, by thinking about that and by thinking about doing this. And the square to Capricorn is like, but no, you can't do that. No, you have to stick to this system and these rules and this game and blah, blah, blah. And then That's the inherent conflict there, right? So maybe some of those themes might get activated from a deeper level. Who knows? I'd love to hear your experiences as this journey unfolds, because I'll be back very soon with much more. I'm going to wrap it up now, actually. Those are the main things that I really wanted to touch on. I think overall, we can safely say that this is an incredibly powerful Aries new moon that's going to be speaking to many, many things unfolding over quite a few weeks, because the solar eclipse on the 29th degree of Aries is the next new moon in the same sign, but at the end of that sign. So that there's something incredibly powerful being born with this new moon in Aries that will have a collective influence and a personal influence. And there will be something very powerful also coming up that speaks to a closing and a finishing of some kind. But it's not going to be subtle. It's going to be quite powerful because it's a solar eclipse. Solar eclipses usually show up in the physical arena, in that platform out there that we call this reality. They really bring up critical situations. So there's a sense of imminent birth, spark of life and source of spirit life energy bursting to come through. And at the same time, there's going to be something very powerful that's completing as well. That's another way you could think about this new moon to that solar eclipse, which I'll come back and talk about in more depth soon. We still have to talk about a full moon in Libra before then. And also, I'd like to come back and talk about Venus in Taurus, her domicile, her rulership position. She's as happy as Larry, in Taurus, but here's the but. She will endure the experience of a square to Pluto, because Pluto is going to ingress into Aquarius a couple of days after this new moon. And so Venus, even though it will be a separating square, she'll still be squaring Pluto, and then she will conjunct Uranus. And I'd like to come back and just talk about the journey of Venus. Speaking of Venus, I have a webinar coming up on the 31st of March. It's all things Venus. It's predominantly the Venus star points, how to understand them, how to locate them, what do they mean, what's the difference between the Venus star point and your natal Venus. Pretty in-depth material. I will also be covering the nodes to Venus. Some of you may or may not know, but every planet has a node, not just the moon. So this is something I've been exploring the last couple of years, the nodes to the planets, that is. And so I'll be talking about the Venus's nodes in this webinar as well. So if you're interested, send me an email and let me know. And we'll just take it from there. In the meantime, sending you all beautiful star blessings for the equinox, new moon in Aries. I hope you feel that beautiful fire spirit inside you to step into something new for yourself, whatever that may be. It's not defined or limited to anything. It's just what you are ready for, at this point in time. It literally can be anything. It just depends on who you are. It's hard to be more specific than that, because being specific means looking at you, right, and your chart. That's when we can get down to specifics. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this one, and hopefully it gives you some things to consider, and I'll see you guys very soon. I think the next one will be Venus in Taurus. So see you soon for that. Much love and happy new moon in Aries. Very powerful one.